International Christian Concern, or the ICC, reports that the Taliban celebrated its third anniversary of its takeover of Afghanistan. The climate for believers in Afghanistan has become very dire. The United States Commission on International Religious Freedom has pleaded with the U.S. Department of State to designate Afghanistan as a country of particular concern since 2022. However, the U.S. Department has never recognized those concerns by making Afghanistan a special watch list country. According to the United States Commission on International Religious Freedom, the Taliban has implemented an extreme version of Sharia law in the country since they took power. The enforcement of that law includes, quote, public executions, lashings and floggings, stoning, beatings, and acts of public humiliation such as forced head shaving, end quote. Not only that, but the Taliban has also restricted contact with the outside world, including many efforts to send assistance to the churches through legal and logistical difficulties. Please pray that believers in Afghanistan would be encouraged and that their faith will remain strong. Joshua 1:9 says, "Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go." On Wednesday, the Taliban celebrated their 3-year occupation in Afghanistan with a military parade at Bagram Airfield, which was once the largest U.S. military base in the country. Not only that, but the parade showcased U.S. military vehicles and weapons that were left behind when the U.S. left Afghanistan. Retired Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg told Fox News about the events that led up to such an abrupt evacuation of the U.S. military and who's responsible.
But primarily it falls on Joe Biden and Kamala Harris because they walked away from the Doha Agreement. That was the agreement that President Trump put in place. It wasn't a perfect agreement. No agreements are perfect. But it was pretty darn good to set the stage for a good conflict ending time in Afghanistan. And it was a conditions-based agreement. Most importantly, what President Trump had done is he had established a personal relationship with Omar Baradar, who was the lead Taliban negotiator. So we had that relationship as well. And when President Trump talked to Baradar, and I was in the Oval Office when that happened, he told him what would happen if they didn't fulfill their agreement. And even though it was translated, I kept thinking to myself, boy, how is this being translated? Because it's pretty stern. After that discussion with Baradar, not a single American was killed in over a year in Afghanistan. But Biden walked away from that agreement.
The rapid evacuation of the U.S. military resulted in $7 billion of military equipment being abandoned in the region. Hal Kempfer, a retired Marine intelligence officer, gave Fox News some insight into what it means to run and maintain that much equipment.
With the Afghan National Army, they were dependent on U.S. contractors to keep all that equipment running. So even though they inherited $7 billion worth of equipment, which is just, I mean, that just still sits on my shoulder. You know, I mean, when I think about this sheer amount of equipment that we left there, it's horrible. Even though we left that, they have a tough time, just like the Afghan national government did, of keeping that stuff going. And without those U.S. contractors there, they lack the expertise. They don't have the spare parts. They don't have an ability to get the spare parts. So what you see rolling there, one of my first thoughts was that may be all of everything we left. That could be the only stuff that's still operating. And that may be about as fast as some of those things could probably drive too. So it's not a silver lining, but it is something to consider.